There you go. Oh, that's okay.
You're recording it on your end, Tim?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. All right. You should be able to hit
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Okay. So sorry, we're also apparently the lights on the panel here are not working properly, so you guys get to see a silhouette of me. I can do little finger puppets over here for my Zoom audience. So again, for those of you who are just looking at the recording, we just started the recording a little late. So I'm Susan Lakin, and I'm a professor here at RIT and introducing Frameless Labs. So Frameless Labs is our initiative here in XR technology, bringing together all faculty, students on campus that are working in virtual reality and augmented reality to help, because extended reality is such a collaborative, interdisciplinary endeavor, really to bring together all of those that are working on research in this area, in these fields, innovating different projects and artistic creation as well too. So trying to just bring everybody together in one kind of centralized location to be able to help enable and to advance these initiatives at Frameless Labs. So you can find all our information at the website here. And sorry, this is not my laptop, so I'm a little slow here. For some reason, I cannot get the cursor, but anyway. So this is just a screenshot of the website. This is a Zoom call from last year. We went completely virtual, as obviously everybody else did as well too. So just a few of the players that are involved in Frameless Labs. So I wanted to give a little history of Frameless Labs, especially because at Siggraph Rochester, a lot of this is about students that are working and learning about computer graphics and about extended reality. Because Anna Dining was a motion picture science student. She was taking classes with a lot of us that were teaching in these areas. And it was around 2016 when a lot of the 360 cameras were coming out, especially had more availability to commercial audience, more accessibility as well too. And she really embraced that. And I wanted to share kind of her story a little bit, because again, assuming, we do have a lot of students in the audience here, and I'm assuming a few in our Zoom audience as well, that she really took the initiative to bring us together as faculty to say, we really should create a lab. And so it was really her initial idea. She came up with the name Frameless, came up with the idea of bringing together a symposium. So we did a one-day symposium in 2016. That was our first one. And we all presented our work at RIT that we were working on. So, I bring her up because she really took a lot of initiative. And it was really beneficial to her as well, too, because it really got her exposed to the campus, to people that were working in these areas. And then she was consequently hired by the university to visit all of the international campuses around the world and shoot 360 videos of all those campuses. So it's just an amazing experience through her efforts in working in this area and really, connecting with people on campus and bringing us all together. She's now working at Technicolor, and this is an image of her senior project on the left. And then on the right, she was in a course that Joe Geigel, who's in our Zoom audience, shout out to Joe, who's over at Highland Diner this morning. And Joe and I teach a collaborative course for the last 10 years, interactive music experiences course. And so 3 of our student projects was accepted to the International Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality Conference in Toronto. So this is Anna here on your right. She is with her peers in class, showcasing their work at this conference. So, again, got an opportunity to travel to Toronto and showcase her work there as well, too. So just really encourage, students to get involved on campus in these initiatives. It's really beneficial. So as I said, we, Anna worked with us to start that first symposium. And then Joe and David Long and I and a few other people, Mark Reisch was part of that initial group. He's on the call here as well too. I'm shouting out to you, Mark. And so, we all got together and, Anna graduated and we said, we really wanted to continue this. So we are now this year in our 6th year of creating a symposium. And we have now connected with University of Rochester. We have one of our PhD students in the audience here from University of Rochester. And so we have some colleagues there that are working with us and really have been expanding the symposium to include both demonstrations as well as papers and talks. And so this year, our symposium is going to be a hybrid. As I mentioned last year, we had to go completely virtual. So we're hoping to have a hybrid. As you can see now, those in the Zoom audience can see that we now are required to wear masks on campus again. But we're hoping that we can still do some physical activities here on campus, as well as having some remote opportunities. So people can both present remotely, attend remotely, or present physically and attend physically as well too. These are just some of the categories that are not necessarily, you don't have to fit in one of these categories. These are just some ideas of different session topics that we've had in the past, just to kind of get your brains going and thinking about what you might want to present and where you might want to present as well too. So this is just a list of suggestions, but we are open to any topics that you may have that you would like to present as well too. So the actual conference, as you can see here, is November 18th to 19th. So put that down on your calendars. Our call for submissions is coming up, and I'll give you the deadlines here in the next slide. We have the website, which I showed you already, which will take you directly to the symposium as well too. Oh, so now I can't get my slide to advance. Come on. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I know, and I'm trying to get, it's like I can see the cursor moving, but it's not actually there. Just trying to get the thumbnails are in the way of my slide, so I can't see the actual dates. Okay, Emily, I may need your help here for a second. It may need your touch because
That's a feature of Keynote that it hides your cursor. Do you
oh
mind if I escape this one?
no, that's fine. I just want to move that window down.
That one? This one?
Yeah, I guess so.
Up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so so this is a list of the types of presentations that you can apply for to submit to the symposium. You can create a talk. So we have usually the traditional symposium type of structure where it's an hour session topic with 20-minute presentations. So you can submit that. So it's a 20-minute oral presentation. You would submit a 1-page abstract for that. If you would like to present a paper, we have a journal. So we do publish the proceedings from the conference. So you can also submit a paper. That's a 4 to 10-page paper. You can present an oral presentation of the paper as well as a paper too, or you can present just a paper and have that published as well. Workshops, if you'd like to present an idea for a workshop, we're talking right now about the possibility of doing that. University of Rochester has created a new XR lab that they are going to be opening up in the fall. So we're talking about the possibility of maybe doing workshops over there. So any type of hands-on type of workshop you're interested in, or even remotely. We had a remote workshop last year, which was quite interesting. So again, that comes with just a 1-page abstract. When you go into Easy Chair is what we're using to submit your proposals. And there's a form that will have you submit for that as well. That's kind of the first deadline, and you'll see here in the submission deadlines, September 3rd is the deadline for that. So that's coming up. It's in 3 weeks. So make sure that you get that in as soon as possible. Then the second set of submissions is your demonstrations, where I'm going to have hopefully go back to 2019, where we're physically having them in the sound stage here. So we're excited about being able to bring that this year. That can be any kind of demonstration of any type of projects, completed projects or work in progress type of projects too. So again, that comes with a one-page description to submit. We would also like you to submit a video to give us a sense of what the project is, how you're going to actually demonstrate that as well. Then installation, we've had in the past some people that have created an installation type of large scale art experience. If you would like to present that, let us know what that is all about. Or performance. We've also had different performances that are scheduled throughout the symposium. And that also requires a one-page description with a video. So those categories, the demo, installation, or performance, those due dates are October 8th. We wanted to give a little bit more time for those presentations because we figured, we're just getting back in the fall, and it could be that people are starting to work on their projects in the beginning of the fall, and to get an idea if they feel like it's ready to be able to showcase. It's a great opportunity, even if it is a work in progress, to present it, to then have an audience to get some feedback as well too. So that's always helpful. So we give notifications of acceptance in late October and early November. Okay. So there's no cost associated with submitting or attending the conference, which is great, makes it very accessible, and really opens up our audience as well. So as I mentioned, the proceedings from the conference are published. Our colleagues Julie Decker and David Halpstein spearheaded creating a frameless journal. And so we have published all the proceedings since 2016. So you can go online to check that out. And you find that on our website under the tab of journal. It's annual as well. It's peer reviewed. All the submissions to the conference or the symposium are peer reviewed and then published here. Now, you also have an option. There's some people that may not want it published at this stage. You're more than welcome to let us know that you'd rather not do that, or you would like to actually have that published as well. So, so there are options there. So last year, because we went completely virtual, we had talked obviously about doing a virtual conference because of the nature of the topic, right? But we hadn't actually done it. So I think, like a lot of people, the pandemic kind of forced us in there. So we embraced it and said, yeah, we really want to do this, but we really want to do more than just a Zoom presentation. And at the time, Mozilla Hubs had just come up with their Hubs rooms. And so that was accessible and it was free. And we wanted to, a lot of conferences at that summer, last summer, were doing different presentations in the Hubs rooms and using kind of their generic rooms. We really wanted to personalize it. We recognize that we've got amazing students with great talent to be able to help create rooms so we could make them more unique to the presentation. So we created a student contest last year and had personalized rooms that people after the symposium talks in Zoom, we all met up in those Hubs rooms so that we could engage with each other's avatars and expand the conversation from the sessions to the Hubs rooms as well too. So we're going to do that again this year. So this is a big shout out to the students. Everybody's invited to participate. So I encourage you guys to consider it. Those of you who are students, those of you who are, faculty or also students, to, please share this and spread the word that there's this opportunity because we do have cash prizes. So you are able to win a first, second, and third place cash prize. We will have some Zoom info sessions. Mark Reisch is helping me out with those. We have one next week on the 19th at 2 o'clock. It will be a Zoom remote info session. If you want to sign up for that, you just email us here at framelesslabs@rit.edu. We can answer any questions. Obviously, I can answer some questions today, but there's that opportunity. And then the following Monday as well at 2 o'clock. Okay. The deadline for that will be September 30th. And if you go to the Frameless website, there are guidelines for that as well too. Let's see. I think that's all the information for the student contest. So just to give you an idea, last year, this is our first place winner, Julian Hauser. And he was a first year freshman undergraduate computer science student. So I was really impressed that, here's an incoming student in a pandemic, working remotely. He really embraced this, created this room. He did a space station. So it was really great. We had 3 or 4 different rooms with different screens. Did just a really impressive job with it. So he was our first place winner. And the room that we utilized the most because it was had the most kind of accessibility and rooms that we could navigate through as well too. So these are just some screenshots of those rooms. Our second place winner was Isabel Anderson. She's been working with us and illustrating in different painting programs. Currently, she's working with myself and my colleague Frank Deese on a project for the Society for the Protection and Care of Children using quill. So this, I think she was using tilt brush for this one. And then she just recently, Zach has shaken his head, yes. Thanks, Zach. So she has now kind of switched to quill for various reasons, but she created this whole underwater world, which was really fun. And we had a great time. Simmer's up in the audience. We were flying around Friday night in her room at the symposium, which was really fun. So she won was a second place winner. And our third place winner was Julia. She went very conceptual in her approach. And we ended up calling it the isolation room. And so she had these abstract bodies kind of flying through the room. And Simmer Kana is our computer science software engineering student that was working with me on the virtual reality platforms. And so he ended up setting it up where only one person at a time could go in that room. And so we really were trying to honor her concept behind the room as well too. And it was kind of her response to the symposium, her response to the pandemic, right? And this sense of feeling isolated. So very diverse approaches. So, I wanted to show those to show just the, different approaches that you can take for this as well too. So we are on all social media platforms. So in addition to our website, you can get updates from us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And then we also last year, because everything was in Zoom, we have posted those on our YouTube channel. So if you want to catch any of the symposiums sessions from last year, you can catch those. We also did some Facebook Live interviews with alumni working in the field. And so some of those are up. I still need to get some of those up on YouTube as well. So you can follow us there. So spread the word. We are, as I said, got the call for submissions, our student contest. We're always, open and looking for volunteers to help, especially with the demo session. We're gonna always look for volunteers that want to engage, and then just, come to the event, which is the 18th and 19th. So thank you very much. This is an image from 2019, which was our last in-person symposium. So this gives you an idea. This is where during our demo session. So you can see, it was great to have everybody in person, and we're hoping to be able to do that again. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing. See if anybody has any questions. Okay.
My students and were very important to
Yeah. So the question was for the Zoom audience, was that there was a presentation in 2019 of a project that they were working on at the beginning stages, and they now have advanced it over the last couple of years, wanting to know if they can submit that for the demo this year as well. So the answer is definitely yes. We like to see that kind of progress. And I was even thinking this year, I would love to kind of go back and reach out to people to see where their progress is and how they've advanced their work. So it is peer reviewed, so you can submit it, but we wouldn't, dismiss it because it had been shown in an earlier point in the process. So I'm seeing if Joe is still with us. It looks like he's jumped off for a second. Joe Geigel is going to, oh, there you are. You're like right next to me and I didn't even notice. Joe, do you want to step in here? Joe I'm chairing the symposium, and Joe is overseeing the demo portion of the symposium. So I just wanted to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn, Joe. So wanted to let you jump in if you'd like.
Thanks, Susan, and hello, everyone. No, absolutely correct, Susan. Yeah, by all means, resubmit it. It's really good to see how these projects have progressed, and particularly for the demos, because the demos is an opportunity to show off, what VR, AR, XR is to people. I mean, that's what makes XR exciting. I mean, they want to experience. So by all means, please do put in the submission.
Yeah. I think the other component is that we are, we're academia, so we have a turnover of students all the time. So we'll have students that weren't here in 2019 that'll be the first time for them to actually experience it. So it's a great opportunity for that as well, too. Any other questions? Yeah, so Emily was asking if this was going to be recorded and posted on YouTube. That is our hope. We are going to do something similar to what we're doing here. What our intention is to have a camera on the podium, a camera in the audience, so that the Zoom audience can actually see the physical audience. Like right now, we can see all of you guys up on the big screen, but you guys can't see us unless I turn around and, oh, but I better not, it's all connected. I was going to turn around and make everybody wave, but so our intention is then to screen that and then record it and then put that up. So if everything works smoothly, that is our hope. So, and it's going to be interesting just to see how many people want to present remotely and want to be here physically too. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? So I'm shouting out to Isabel, just walked in. I was just showing off your hubs room a minute ago. So, okay, and it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tim and thank everybody in the Zoom audience for attending and all of you here in the physical audience. Really appreciate it.
Presenting. So thank you for presenting. All right, everybody. We are going to go on. Let's say we'll be back at 11:15 with the next presentation, which is by me, and then it'll be 3 presentations right back to back. It'll be myself presenting VP in Rochester, Mark Reisch presenting virtual production and stop motion animation research, and then Emily Haldeman presenting AR for advertising. So I'll see you all back at 11:15. All right, everybody. Welcome back from break. Make sure everybody is back. Yay! After break. Yeah. So my name is Tim Stringer, and today I'll be presenting to you guys virtual production in Rochester. So as we get started, you're probably wondering, well, who the heck are you? So a little bit about me. I'm from New Hampshire. My dad was in the Army, so I bounced around a little bit, but went to high school in New Hampshire and then came to RIT, where I graduated in 2019 with a BFA in 3D animation from SOFA here. I created with Emily in the front row SOFA's first VR animated film. Now we adjuncts together in the 3D digital design program here at RIT do an AR and VR class. I'm also a human resources officer in the U.S. Army Reserve. I'm also your secretary in the Greater Rochester Siggraph chapter. And my day job is I'm emerging tech production lead at Optic Sky. So get to know us. Who is Optic Sky? Optic Sky is an advertising and digital experience production company based out of Rochester, New York, founded by Aaron Gordon in 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. We have quickly grown to have some pretty big clients here in Rochester, and me and Emily are charged with bringing them content that is outside of the norm. So I wanted to start the presentation by talking a little bit about intro to virtual production. What is virtual production? And then we'll get into the project that we recently created here at RIT. Echoing, so I'm gonna move my phone. So what are the virtual production categories? So there are basically three when you break it down. You have entirely in-engine, you have real-time compositing on green screen, and you have in-camera VFX. What we did here at RIT was in-camera VFX with LED panels, but I did want to mention the other two just so that people were familiar with them. Entirely in-engine, a couple of years ago at Real-Time Live, actually this technology was presented, which was awesome, where using an XN suit and an iPhone, you could get almost full body motion capture in engine. And that's sort of what you see right up there at the top left. This was actually just made recently in the end of 2020. By the same guy who won a few years ago. In the top right is green screen. So utilizing green screen, traditional green screen technology, instead of having to wait for all of the content to be seen in post, you can actually see it in real time in engine on set. So that's a great way to see your digital elements in real time. But unfortunately, you still have all the same issues that you would normally have with green screen technology, which brings me to in-camera VFX, where by using LED panels, you can see on set and see what your camera is seeing and feed the camera the correct parallax with screens on set using Unreal Engine. So one term I did want to familiarize everybody with is frustum. So frustum is, and I'll move everybody out of the way. Frustum, by definition, is the portion of a cone or pyramid which remains after its upper part has been cut off by a plane parallel to its base or which is intercepted between two such planes, which is a lot of gibberish. I like the picture in the bottom left, which shows me visually a little bit better what a frustum is. So in that bottom left picture, if you imagine that that first rectangle after the camera is your screen and that farther rectangle is what's in the world, we're basically saying, okay, where is my camera looking into the virtual space and saying where on my LED panel are we actually going to hit with the camera? And then we render that with the correct parallax. So that's actually what you're seeing in the top right there. That was from Unreal Engine's demo a few years ago, which sort of got us excited and inspired here at RIT about that. The green space is our inner frustum. That's what the camera is going to be seeing as it moves around, and it's going to be updated as we move our camera through our real space. And then the outside of that, where you see the forest, that would be your outer frustum. That's basically going to be static and is like a render that is still active, but is not going to update as the camera moves around the space. It's just there for reflection capture purposes. So that's what a frustum is. I did want to mention this diagram. I'm not going to delve all the way into it, but this was a huge resource for us as we got through learning about virtual production, and it is available to everybody on the Unreal Engine overview. It basically breaks down the whole process as to what sort of needs to be connected to what in order to make this successful. The big things here are in the top right, you have image processing. At the bottom, you have all the nodes as far as operators who need to be using Unreal Engine. And you can see how the camera kind of fits into the whole process. So your render nodes are feeding images to the LEDs. Your camera is taking in giving camera tracking information. It is taking in gen and frame lock, which I'll talk about in a little bit, as well as connected to Video Village. So you can see that it's kind of complex, but once it's all simplified, it's not so bad. So this is a great resource if you're going to try to get in and do it yourself. Next, I wanted to screen our project for everybody. And then we'll talk about behind the scenes and how we made it. Why are we not getting audio?
The Zoom settings?
What would be wrong? Boom.
Oh my God.
This is a tech conference. I swear it's a tech conference. All right, we'll give it a shot. If worse comes to worse and it doesn't work, you'll at least see the visuals. Ta-da. Let me get back to the presentation.
So that was something Optic Sky made for the bike company?
Yeah, I'll talk about it literally right now. I'll explain. Just trying to get back to the presentation. Yeah, that's it. And we just gotta full screen it. No, it's just there it goes. Yeah, so what you just saw was a collaboration between all four of these organizations, really. That project was a 30-second ad for the RIT electric vehicle team here at RIT, who they take normal gas-powered motorcycles, make them electric, and then race them. So what they wanted to do was be able to advertise a motorcycle that had yet to be created for their donors, so that they could turn around and ask for money and say, hey, look at what we're going to build with your money. And so the bike that you saw at the end, the dirt bike that they're building, has not yet been created. So virtual production was a great use case for that, because we were able to show off something that hadn't been created yet and have it on set with 2 bikes that they actually had created. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, so collaboration between Optic Sky, RIT, Epic Games, and PRG. Optic Sky was the, well, obviously Emily and I work for Optic Sky. We were the production part of this. We provided the professional production personnel. RIT provided students on set. So we, having sort of been in conjunction with the class that RIT is founding for virtual production with Epic Games and an Epic Mega Grant money, we're able to get the students on set onto a professional production to create a cool product. And PRG was gracious enough to provide the panels, all the LED panels that we showed on, which I'm about to talk about in a second. So when we started this at the beginning of the year, we were kind of at a loss. We had no idea what the heck we were doing. We had some VR and AR experience, but we were VP noobs. This is kind of us at the beginning. All the equipment had been collected and or delivered to us, and we were clueless about everything. But quickly, we got our feet under us because we did do some testing on like regular monitors before we got to LED stage size, so that we were at least a little bit familiar. But of course, challenges came with the LED panels and the processing and having more nodes than just one computer. But this is what our stage looked like as we were testing for a few weeks at the beginning of getting the equipment. And then eventually this evolved into a full-blown 3-sided production volume using a projector, a 4K projector like the one here in this theater, projecting onto the back of a large rear projection screen, as well as utilizing the 2 LED walls that we were provided with multiple render nodes, and sort of blossomed into this awesome set. But to talk a little bit about the walls that we actually wound up having from PRG, we had 2 2-meter by 4-meter LED walls. So we had a collective 2 by 8 meters of LED panel volume. And in the bottom left there is an example of what those LEDs actually look like close up. So from far away, the screen looks like completely normal. You get up close and you see it's a bunch of little dots, basically. So those little dots are actually really important because how those dots are actually oriented, and each panel is a little bit different, can create artifacts left and right. So if you were going to go do this yourself, that's just one thing to keep an eye out on, is as you go up and down and left and right and see these panels at a different angle, you might wind up with some color shifts. So just be cognizant of that if you were going to do it in the future. And on the bottom middle there is example of what one of these panels looked like on the back. So each wall was actually just a series of square 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter panels that we stacked up together, and we're all daisy chains for video and power signal all together to create one wall. On the right there is what sort of all those panels look like together. It was surprisingly a little bit simpler than I thought it was going to be. Like looking at it, you're like, oh, it's a super complex, but it's really just a few cords that do similar things. And we had Row Black Onyx, the first edition of those panels, with 2.8 millimeter pixel pitch. Pixel pitch is very important when you're talking about virtual production, because that is actually the distance that you have between your pixels. And so instead of talking resolution like 1920 by 1080, you talk about LED panels and pixel pitch, because you might have a different pixel density on different panels. So pitch is how we talk about resolution when it comes to LEDs. On the top here, you can see our camera tracking. And this is a slide about camera tracking. So for this project, we had OptiTrack S250E camera tracking solution, which came from PRG, which we actually loved. It was amazing. We initially tried to use an HTC Vive, and although it's possible, having a higher end tracking solution like the OptiTrack turned out to be immensely helpful. It's software motive, which you can see a picture of here, will actually recognize all the sensors through a network switch. So each camera has an Ethernet cord plugged into it that goes to a network switch, which broadcasts out information onto your local network. And then Motive, the software that comes with it, or you have to pay for, winds up taking in that information and tracking these little balls right here. So these are little reflective tape like foam balls. Oh, we're still good. And so in the middle here is actually the camera tracker that we created out of just a little RE plate, and then we screwed in the balls into little extenders, and then that gave us 6 degrees of freedom, so we could pitch, yaw, roll, and translate around in the space, just tracking this tracker. And down here is a representation of what each camera could see. So these little dots down here are how it picks up these dots here and then translates that into 3D space. In the bottom right is how we calibrate the system. So in Motive, you would take this wand, and once you begin calibration, walk around the space with the wand. It recognizes that wand in the space and then calibrates everything for you. It was super easy and super user-friendly. And then you would calibrate your 000 location using this calibration square to make sure that your virtual world and your physical spaces line up together. That's really important when you get into Unreal and some of your blueprints, is knowing where your 0 is. Just wanted to briefly talk about what we had as far as servers and LED processors. So on the left here, we have some network switches. This is like a master video switch. We had our 2 LED processors here, right here, an additional one for the ceiling panels that we didn't wind up using, and a power supply. And then on the right side here was a master time clock, some like a drawer. These were 2 Disguise servers. So Disguise makes XR servers that basically let you do everything from projection mapping to virtual production. So that was pretty cool, but we didn't utilize it for this shoot. And then we also had another UPS at the bottom, so no power was interrupted. And then this computer here acted as our interface for the LED processing software, and that's how we got, you know, stuff to the wall. So that slide earlier that had all the different connections can kind of be boiled down to this. You have your OptiTrack, which tracks your camera in the space. That gets fed into Unreal Engine via an OptiTrack plugin, so it's really easy to work with. Within Unreal Engine, we create all of our digital content as far as what the set's going to look like. And then utilizing the NDisplay plugin, we pass our information onto the M2 processor, which then feeds it onto the walls. And then this is not actually the wall, this is the rear projection screen. So NDisplay can actually just take in, hey, how many displays do I have? And then we tell it, hey, you actually have 3 displays that you're going to be using. And that's what these were actually in Unreal Engine. We had to create digital representations of what our actual screens look like. And then we create a little mask because our processors were expecting a 1920 by 1080 feed basically. And our resolution of our screens was actually below that. So the white part that you see in the middle here is actually what we were going to render out to the screens. But the processor needed to take in a larger video source. So that's why you have this black mask on there. Let's say there's supposed to be a video. So when it all comes together,
and action.
This is what it would look like on set. So we had our screens, and then you can see that in camera, you're actually getting pretty accurate or really accurate parallax in the digital world as the camera dollies across our rider. You can sort of see the edge of the frustum here, and as it updates, and then in camera, you wind up looking like you're looking into a virtual world as that camera goes across the set. So it's pretty cool.
That was it.
That was it. So some things to consider. If you're going to do virtual production, why are you doing virtual production? For us, it was that, you know, we had a bike that hadn't been created yet, and we wanted it to be on set with everything. And we also wanted to shoot at multiple locations. Had we actually flown people out to a canyon and then also to a track and then also to another spot, it would be massively expensive production costs for a 30-second spot. But instead, virtual production allowed us to shoot on one set across 2 days at 4 locations. So it was a great opportunity there. It really ups your actor's immersion from hearing from actors. Being able to actually see the virtual world while they're acting allows them to play off the things that they're seeing. Whereas if they're acting on a green screen, you know, it's a little tougher to visualize sort of what you're seeing, whereas these walls can really up that immersion. And finally, control. Like the set issue, if you want ultimate control of an environment, we can put you anywhere and anything your mind can think of on one set. So that's pretty cool. Another thing to consider is pixel pitch versus camera. So in this bottom picture here, what you're seeing is moire patterns. So this can happen if your LED walls do not have a high enough resolution compared to the camera at which you're shooting against that wall. So this was taken on my iPhone against the same walls that were in the actual spot. So you have to test your camera against the walls to make sure you're not going to wind up with any patterns. And we did, I wouldn't say super extensive, but we did definitely do testing to make sure that the cameras would work at different distances and different angles before we actually got to production. Another thing to consider is gen and frame lock. And you might be saying, what is gen and frame lock? Well, gen and frame lock are all about getting your devices flashing at the same moment. So if you think about, you know, my camera's taking a picture ever so often and my screen is refreshing ever so often, how do we make sure that they are both beating the same drum as far as here's a new image and are these images at the same time code? So gen lock is all about beating on the same drum, and frame lock is about saying, okay, I'm at frame 24 and I'm at frame 24, so that they're not beating on the same drum at frame 23 and 24 at different times. We didn't actually achieve that on this. We were close, but you can see here and some of the shots, you wind up with a little bit of bleeding, and this is what happens if you don't get gen and frame lock, is you will actually wind up with the screen is updating as you take a picture, and then you wind up with artifacts. So that's why that's important. Finally, how large of a volume do you need? That was a huge question for us as we got started. And this also says a lot of things about how much computing you need. Because you're rendering real time, you need a fairly powerful computer. Luckily on our shoot, we had A6000s in our computers, so we had plenty of computing power, but that's just something to consider is how big of a volume area am I shooting on and how much computing power and processing am I going to need. So future work, what do we want to do in the future now that we've made this project? Well, first is a gen and frame lock workflow. We ran into some issues with none of the cameras here at RIT could accept gen lock in natively. So that became a problem. And we're working on ways to get around that. Also, we want to work on realistic zoom and focus on our inner frustum. We came up with a solution here using another rigid body for OptiTrack. So we had the camera tracker, and then we also created this small tracker that would go on the focus wheel. So as you would twist the knob, it would rotate this little thing. And then Unreal would say, okay, how rotated is this thing? And then update your focus on the inner frustum. But we want to make that better. And the ultimate goal being you can zoom the physical camera up until the wall. And then once the physical camera is focused on the wall, then all the rest of it is digital zoom. So that then you get a really realistic zoom from physical to digital space. We want to work on VR scouting, multi-user editing sessions kind of go hand in hand. We also want to continue work on DMX control lighting, where real and virtual lights. On this set, we did have a DMX board that we used to control all of our lights on our set simultaneously, but we would like to connect it to Unreal so that all the lighting effects in the world match our virtual world, so that if we do something like, say, swing from night to daytime, we don't have to update all the lights on set. We can just tell Unreal to do it. And then that would send information to our physical lights as well. And one thing of note, UE5 will be adding a lot of new tools for VP, which is going to be super cool. And they're holding a talk on August 25th about the state of VP as we get into UE5. So if you're interested in this talk, I would highly recommend checking out that talk because I will definitely be there learning as well. And that's really exciting with what the future holds. So what does this all mean? First of all, it means we have a great opportunity in our region to be a part of this movement. Like if you guys are here, like you probably are interested in a little bit of what this is going on. And we will have students here in Rochester who are capable of working on virtual production sets and be part of regional studios here in Rochester. And finally, it's if you're interested, how can you contribute? This type of stuff is not going to be one discipline. I mean, it took everybody from networking and getting computers talking to each other to exclusively 3D artists to sort of what me and Emily do, which is walk the line between all of them to get something like this working. So if you're interested in it, it's not inaccessible. Like we started on little monitors in our house. So if you're interested, just try to get started whenever way you can and start to contribute to it because even the industry, as a whole is still figuring this stuff out. And there's a lot of room for us to do research here. I don't know what's taking so long to load now. Well, that was really it. There was like one more GIF and my contact information. So hopefully I can get that up for you guys. But yeah, it's telling me I got an error. Oh man. Yeah, it's trying to tell me my talk's over, and I'm like, no, it's not over yet. Well, while I get to that slide, that's really it. So I guess I'll open the floor now to questions, and I'll throw my email in the chat for anybody. And for everybody here, it's just Tim@OpticSkyPro. And if you got my email about this, you got my email. So yeah, we'll start with Chow here in person. I'm just trying to get the Zoom back up for everybody. Sorry. Yes, Chow. Yeah.
So I have actually two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is regarding the display wall.
Mm-hmm.
Is a single projected wall or is it how to display something?
Yeah, so for everybody on Zoom, the question was the wall one piece or multiple pieces? The wall was multiple squares that we actually wound up connecting together. So that type of setup we had was actually modular. So had we wanted to, we could have broken those walls down and reset them in any orientation that we wanted. We just chose those just because we were trying to get as much wrap around as we could with enough headroom for our actor. we wound up shooting most of it on the rear projection screen because we wanted camera angles that were like lower, and that 30-foot projection screen was just big enough that we could get down. But as far as the LED panels go, yeah, they were completely modular, half meter by half meter panels. Yeah, we had to do a little bit of work for the seam to get rid of it. It's really untechnical, that workflow. We literally just went up and like smacked them until they like until they like looked flat. I'm sure there's a better way to do that than what we did, but in the moment we didn't really have anything better. So yeah, that's kind of what we did. We slide everything in, and then there were like little refinements that you could do as far as angling the panel, and then from there, the little mat that was on the thing, we just smacked it until it looks good. Yeah.
The second question is regarding, I know you work with Optic, right?
Mhm.
And also the IRL.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering how you make them work in real time. Is there like a plugin of third-party software that can bring the motion data to the Unreal Engine?
Yeah. So for everybody on Zoom, the question was about getting motives data into Unreal Engine. And there is a plugin from Optic. So Motive has a plugin for UE4. So once you download that plugin, you have to turn on broadcasting in Motive. And then you have to tell it in Unreal which channel you should be listening to, because you can create different like Motive channels as you're broadcasting. And then from there, it was really easy. It came with a blueprint that you placed in the scene, and that was where your 0, 0 point is. So we could take our origin, and at any point, if we wanted to like move across the scene, we just grab a few blueprints that we had, and we just drag them to a new spot and then hit play, and then we would be in this new location. So the Optic plugin was a tremendous help. Although an expensive system, I would say it was well worth it if you were going to do your own like big production. To have a camera tracking solution that worked as simply as that did was a huge time saver in the long run. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we absolutely loved it. And even though the camera tracking that like the cameras we had were kind of old, like overall the workflow that I found was extremely user friendly once we got it going. So yeah, yeah, of course. Everybody.
I have a question I want to give everyone online a chance.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta check the chat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we got one. Question, Tim. How did you control the proportionality between the actor camera feed and the virtual walls and objects? If we're talking about like scale of objects, I think is what that's talking about. The scale as far as like UE4 takes in centimeters, and so did Motive. So everything kind of works automatically for that type of stuff. Centimeter seems to be the standard for everything. So when we were modeling worlds and things, we made sure that everything was at that centimeter scale, and then you just have to check, you know, if you want something to be 5 feet, you just have to model it to 5 feet, which is something that as a student I didn't do. When I was making my models, they all wound up being like half an inch. So that's something to consider if you're going to model for virtual reality or for VP, is how big are the objects that you're actually modeling. But as far as the scale, I think the only trouble we had was we had a point where the rotation was coming in at 1/10 of what it should have been. And we just had to say, as the information was coming in, multiply it by 10, and then it worked out fine. So overall, I would say that the proportionality mostly sorted itself out, with one exception on some of the Optic data. Of course.
Yeah, so
Yeah, David.
I'm sitting there, so my hat as director for the School of Interactive Games and Media.
Mhm.
How many computing people are sitting there like, oh crap, I need to set a variable? Like, how much programming, coding is happening?
So once it's really just code and less code. We me and Emily know a little bit of code, but primarily do visual scripting in UE4 via blueprints. And so once your blueprints are set up, most of that stuff is done heavily in the pre-production, because ideally once you're on set, you've created enough tools and things that you would execute. So on set, I would say like little to no like active programming, unless something breaks, and then you're like, oh crap, where the heck did it break, and then get it back up for set. But most of our scripting came beforehand as we were learning about how to get stuff up on the screen, and setting up all of our blueprints so that the day of execution was play, basically, which we wound up breaking one of our blueprints the day of set. So we realized we wanted stuff to move down the, we wanted to feel like we were riding the motorcycle, and we started to try to move the origin that we had created. And by moving that, we wound up with a bunch of stutter. So it was as if the refresh rate wasn't fast enough. So we wound up like stuttering down the road. And the way we got around that, and we had to fix it day of, was we took the whole world and moved it past our origin. So instead of moving us through the world, we moved the world around us. So that was kind of the only scripting that like happened on set. Other than that, it was all pre kind of done beforehand, and most of it you can accomplish via blueprints. But if you're going to create other tools, I would say that's probably where programming comes in, and it's probably above my head as far as knowledge.
Yeah, it's one of the things that administrators, students, people are wondering, where is that line now? As film, art, 3D, and the world of game development, science and so forth. Where do the students, where should they be? And one of the questions that I've been sort of back in my mind. And then what's also hitting the newsfeed is no-code solutions.
Right.
That, in other words, let the programmers develop these tools, so that's like practitioners, things like they're worried about memory management.
Right. That's kind of where we're at as far as me and Emily is. We're kind of on the back end where most of these things are already enabled for us. We just got to push them together and deliver it. It took a lot of different YouTube tutorials, and that's why I was emphasizing at the end how interdisciplinary this is going to be. And it's going to take kids from IGM, it's going to take SOFA kids, it's going to take 3DDD kids, all working together in order to get something like this working as far as a set, because you need people who understand the computers and how to optimize and the network and all that stuff. But you also need, on the other end, artists who can create convincing worlds. And then you need storytellers to come in and mash everything together. So it's really like, it's going to take everybody working together to get this going. And luckily, that's what Magic's all about, is working together, interdisciplinary. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Awesome.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I did work for the production line in Puerto Rico.
Oh, awesome.
So I work like a student character artist programmer, then
Oh, great.
how heavy
Yeah.
the student work in that department for the 3D and or they work, or if you use like make a scan.
Yeah. Initially, that was our goal, was to utilize all the students for everything, because and they did create stuff. It just wound up being that we needed, our timeline was so crunched that we wound up using a lot of mega scans. We had the track environment you saw was a pack. We wound up using Brushify.io from the UE4 marketplace for the second world. And then the final bike model was created by students and Mark Reisch. So I would say if we had more time, I think we would be able to utilize the students a little bit more. But given the timeline that we had, where we basically turned this around in about 2 months from like not knowing anything to executing a 30-second ad, we wound up having to crunch a little bit and using some of those pre-built assets, which, in the future, if we could integrate students more, obviously that's the goal. It just didn't happen as much for this project. Yeah, of course.
There's
Being thought about. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the question was, are we building a library for virtual production? As far as assets that have been created, I don't know of any coordinated effort right now. I know that going through the going through the SOFA program, there was an asset of like rigs and things that have been created in the past that students could use. This course was the first time this had been run, and it was really like we were figuring out what the heck we were doing. So I think now that we're starting the course VP1 in the fall and VP2 in the spring, I think that would be a great effort to mount. And it's going to be something that is going to take multiple groups working together again on that, because I know that sometimes assets are held just in IGM or just in SOFA. So there's going to have to be some sort of like group render share somewhere that's going to be able to be accessed by everybody. So that's going to be really important, I think, for collaboration. There you go. Yeah. Awesome, man. That's cool. Did I miss anybody? Is there any more questions in the chat?
Yeah. Greetings to Anne from Washington.
Awesome. Any last thoughts in the physical space? Great, guys. Thank you so much. And now is Mark Reisch, who will be presenting virtually from his location.
So it's not just killing my computer. Where is it? It's me. Oh, are you still sharing? Oh,
There you go. Oops.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Reisch. I am one of the 3D animation professors here at RIT. I'm going to share my screen here so that let's see what's going on. There we go. So my production or my talk is going to be virtual production in stop motion, and I think it's a good segue from what Tim was talking about and where we are going to go from here. Hopefully that goes away. So about a year ago, I had an idea of the volume. Well, I had just seen The Mandalorian and finally drank the Kool-Aid of what virtual production is. I finally got it. And while I was on a run, I had this idea of, well, we obviously aren't going to get a volume of LED walls. It just wasn't what we're going to get. So I was trying to think of how we could do a volume on a small scale. So this idea was essentially to have a monitor that was going to be attached onto a rod and then connected down to a monitor with, this would be our virtual camera, or what I was using at the time as an Oculus control. And then you'd be able to swing the camera around, and then where the camera went, the screen would be, 180 degrees from that. So you'd be able to see the virtual world and possibly do some production where we could do, two people talking or one person maybe running, kind of medium shot, and then we could look over their shoulder as they come up onto a ridge or something like that. So I created, again, the attaching a motion controller, an Oculus controller, and a camera to a monitor. The reason why I liked it is that it was incredibly low budget. So I figured that anybody, it'd be a little bit more accessible to a lot more people. And I just needed to create a proof of concept for this design. So I had my two little helpers help me out, kind of demonstrating this here. But essentially here I have the camera. You might not be able to see it here, but the Oculus controller is very jankily taped to this scrap piece of board that I have. And then I screwed that into a monitor. You can still see the stand there. And so my idea was just to kind of give a little prototype to having a stormtrooper or character in the middle. And you can see that as my daughter moves the camera around, the virtual world is getting projected onto the screen. Okay. And so what that looks like, the results of that are something similar to this, where you have the character who could stay still, and then you would have the monitor going by. And so essentially a small scale Mandalorian wall. You could look up, you could look down, and you basically got that volume. The problem with this is that you only have one screen. So where the volume gives you the lighting on either side of you or top or bottom, this would only provide light from the front. So you'd have to set up extra lighting to get that. So you wouldn't quite get that, but again, this is just a smaller scale, lower budget idea. So I was thinking and working on that, and then we finally got the LED walls from RBG, and they donated the walls to us, those 2 panels that Tim went into. And we had to figure out how to get those LED walls working. And that was, you know, a huge undertaking. We were incorporating Unreal, then we had to integrate the camera tracking. And then I helped with the EVT virtual production. And then about, I think about 2 months ago, the LED walls, or about a month ago, they needed the LED walls back. So that loan has since ended. So where do we go from here? We don't have the walls anymore. So what I wanted to do is to then, again, go back to that, that prototype that I had and look at stop motion virtual production. So we're going to use the same large scale techniques, looking at having the tracking and things like that. But we need to have something a little bit of a cheaper camera tracking. Like Tim said, that the Optic was great, and I'd love to use it, but it's not necessarily something that all of the people maybe using stop motion would be able to use or afford, or even in classrooms if they'd be able to use or afford that. So I was looking at something that was going to be a cheaper camera tracking. So we had the possibility of also using a freeze bot, which is like a robotic arm. And so that idea came up that I might be able to attach a monitor onto the freeze bot. And this was a demonstration of kind of what I was hoping to be able to do with that, was to take the freeze bot, that's the robotic arm right there, and then place it onto a panel, and then essentially get the same movement, but have a little bit more freedom because the camera wasn't attached to the monitor. Then with the panels going away, the freeze bot ended up going away. So I had to shift gears again. And then what I was thinking of doing is taking some potentiometers or the name escapes me right now, but basically the rotary encoders, there it is. Take some rotary encoders and again, attach them to a camera. So here I have my camera, here I have a rotary encoder here and here to get my up and down motions. And as I scrub through here, there's my rotary encoder. So I'd be able to move this thing left and right, up and down. And so that would move the camera and be able to project onto the screen. So, so using our Arduino and some rotary encoders, that was the idea of how I was going to go through the next step of virtual production. So getting the team together, we got Jennifer, Tim, Tom, and Emily. Tom, we're hoping to be able to get him to do the stop motion part of it, but otherwise, you know, getting his knowledge and expertise on stop motion. We're currently considering using the Ditto Gear Omni slider, not set in stone yet. We haven't bought anything, but that's kind of where we're leaning towards getting. The shift came where David was saying that this might be some gear that would be good for Magic to have. So rather than trying to put something together, let's look at what other options are out there. So we're looking at possibly having this motion controller, and then Magic already has the LG screen, and so we're planning on looking at that. Then the idea now is to have I have a Lego Wally. And so I thought using Legos would probably be the easiest way to kind of get the proof of concept of stop motion and then be able to replicate that in the real world. So I built a virtual Wally. I have a real Wally. And now what I need to do is rig that in Unreal. So using Control Rig in Unreal, it's a new system that they're using. And I love it. It's great for what it is right now, either using FK controllers or IK controls, biped characters, quadrupeds. You can rig all of those really nice and easily, and it's much more forgiving than Maya is. But currently right now, they don't have a system for tracks. So I was thinking that this would be an easy type system, but talking with the developer of it, he's saying that they don't have that ability right now. So what I have been going along doing is manually animating the one track going around, and you can see that one track at the top there when that starts over, and then reproducing that and then offsetting the animation so that it so that I kind of get something that looks like some treads. And then here I'm actually kind of faking the funk from that previous animation that the tracks are moving. I'm actually just grabbing the control rig and then dragging it across the screen. So Tim was helping me get the positional data, and so what I hope to be able to do is to, or what I plan to do is to be able to drive the central rig, move that, and when that moves, then the tracks start moving with it. So what's next? Insert storyboard here. So I have the idea for the animation, and it's in my head somewhere in there, and I have an inkling of what I want to do, but we still have to make the storyboard on that. Then we have to I have to finish the rig on it. We plan on testing the monitor, so to get the real world look versus the virtual world in Wally, and make sure that we can get the same lighting and texture and things like that on them. We plan to then make the film and then work with Apartment D. It's a company started by Max Lopez and Sean. The last name escapes me, but they are out there in LA, and they are just going gangbusters out there. The Apartment D is really going to town on stop motion. So what I'd like to do is to help them get into virtual production. So the possibility of not having to build all of the sets, but be able to kind of cut down some of that time and production costs and space for them. And that is where we are. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to take them right now. I'll stop sharing. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me at mark.reisch@rit.edu, mark.reisch.rit.edu. All right, thank you. Let's see, questions. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of pivots and shifts, and so this whole thing has been like sand. But we keep kind of crawling our way out of it, and I'm planning hopefully by the hopefully before winter break that we'll actually have the film going. That's how close I think we're getting. So. And I also plan to animate in Unreal, so that's going to be another kind of learning process. But being able to learn that process and go into Unreal has been pretty good, and I think that'll also help speed up the production later on. Let's see. What types of shot would you be most excited to do with the motion control? Well, right now, if I can get that Wally working and have the Wally working and then getting the treads working, I think I'll be over the moon if I can get that going. And I say if, but I'm going to be able to get it going. There's not a question about it. But I think once Wally rolls out there on his own, I think that'll be pretty cool. And then also seeing the parallax, we're gonna set up a shot where we're kind of like coming down as he's rolling in and get the parallax of the other virtual Wally that's going to be in there. So I think that'll be pretty cool. Any other?
Yeah, we got a question here. Chell's got a question.
All right.
So,
Shoot.
Considering, yeah, maybe Tim can
Yeah, I'll relay.
yeah. So do you considering using the 3D printing technique? So basically you can have the virtual which is printed to the physical exactly as the design. So that makes it more consistent.
Yeah. So Chow was asking, have you considered 3D printing your virtual model so that your virtual and your physical models will be identical?
Well, I used a program from Bricklink that you can go in and essentially use virtual Legos. Like you have all access to all of the Legos, and they all snap together. And then you can export it out as an OBJ or FBX files. They even have the little Lego the Lego wording on it. And so I created that from that website, and then took measurements with my with the real world Wally that I have, and it measures exactly. So the only thing that I really need to do is just kind of hone the textures, and I think we'll be 99% there. So I lucked out with that. That was on Tim. Tim found that one, and I was like, I'm gonna give that a try.
Cool. We have another question here.
It took about 2 days to put that, 2 to 3 days to put the whole thing together virtually. But it's brick, one-to-one brick equivalent.
Yeah, go ahead.
What were some of the quirks you faced when you were implementing the Oculus graphic?
Did you hear that one?
Mm-mm.
Were there any quirks or anything that showed up as you were using the Oculus on the first setup? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Were there any like issues or things you ran into as you were implementing the Oculus?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found using the Oculus for that setup was that I had to make sure that the Oculus was on. That was a difficult setup. It was also using VRPN. So when we did the big LED wall test, we were using VRPN, and at the time we were using 4.26, I think. And VRPN was still acting goofy with it, and it's a lot of things to get running and get working. 4.27 is supposed to be much easier and has a better implementation of VRPN. And so that would probably be, I think, the hardest thing was just figuring the whole, I was figuring the whole process out at that time. It was not just like, okay, let me try getting the screen up, but it was like, how do I do end display? So all of those things were coming into play at that point. Hope that helps. But if you are trying VRPN, you can reach out and we can I can help you get that set up. But make sure that your mask is on. I put some tape over the little sensor to keep it turned on so that it would constantly be running.
Awesome. Any more questions here in person? Great. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for your presentation. That was awesome. As you guys saw, that his contact information was at the end of his presentation. So if you,
I'll put it in the screen share or the chat too.
Awesome. If you throw mine into, that'd be cool.
Oh yeah.
And then for our last presentation of the day, and certainly the most least. No, I'm just kidding. Next is Emily Haldeman from Optic Sky to talk about AR advertising and yeah, AR advertising. That's what I was going to say, but of course.
All righty. Let's get this up and going. Okay, well, I timed that out well. All right. So this laptop is from 2015, so if anybody has an Apple product, I think you understand the issues. All right. All right, so we are going to be talking about AR for advertising. A little bit of background on me. I'm Emily Haldeman. My last 3 years are pretty much identical to Tim. We've been working side by side since we were students here on our capstone. I graduated with a BFA in 3D animation. We made our capstone in VR, got hired at Optic Sky, and we are now emerging tech production leads there. We also do teach a class on AR and VR here at RIT, so this is kind of our whole life. It's a lot of fun, and I'm going to be going over kind of how we use AR in our field. Ooh, it did, sailing at me. All right. You may recognize this slide from earlier today. Apparently we use the same slide deck, but so we both work for Optic Sky Productions. We are a production company here in Rochester. So we mostly do live action. It was founded as a live action commercial production company. We make short ads for people. And then recently, about 2 to 3 years ago, they brought on me and Tim to do emerging tech. So that's that. Some brands we've worked with. So yeah, like I was saying, we mostly do production. Since its inception, we've taken on animation. We do a lot of post and a lot of like base creative for things. And then we also do digital experiences. So this is pretty much everything under the sun that is non-traditional media. We do AR, VR. We don't do MR yet. We're looking to get into it. And we do also do immersive web experiences. And then pretty much anything that you can come up with that's not animation or a traditional live action commercial. So augmented reality or AR, I think we all kind of know what that is. I would hope, because we've been talking about it all day, but in case we don't, there are 3 main types of AR, face tracking, plane tracking, and target tracking. Face tracking is it recognizes faces. It can recognize the points on your face. I'll get into that in a second. Plane tracking is pretty much just recognizing a flat surface in a plane. And then target tracking is you load in an image and it recognizes that image. Most of what we do is face tracking because that's typically what people like using the most. You know, people are self-centered, right? We all love to see ourselves. So using face tracking is a really good way to engage with people and make it something that they also want to share. So face tracking, it recognizes the points on your face. These are a little creepy, but you can see it's a really good visualization for the points that it tracks. It makes the AR super customizable and very individual. So it forms to your face, it reacts to your face, and it can recognize things like your facial movements, your emotions, your expressions, things like that. So once we have a face that's tracked, we can use softwares such as Spark AR or Snapchat Lens Studio, or even Unreal and Unity to put objects on the face trackers. So this is what you see here in the program. We say when you find a face, put this like flower on it. And then this is a visualization on the right here of what you would see in camera. So it finds a face and then puts it on it. It's super easy to use, super easy to build out, and it can be a lot of fun. So there are three main types of AR. The big one that we do is social AR. What is social AR? It's pretty much any AR that lives within an existing social media app. So the big three for that are Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same company, Facebook. So they're kind of one entity at this point. We really like using social AR, especially for advertising, because it's easy to share, right? You get into this cycle of, I'm posting it on my story, all my friends are seeing it, they're using it, they're posting it, their friends are seeing it. So it's got a really, really great organic reach. This project that you see here is something we built for Lego, where you can customize your own minifigure, and then it will respond to your facial movements as you speak and move, your eyebrows and blink and stuff. We hosted this on our page, not even the Lego page, and our Instagram page at the time had about 300 followers, and we had $0 in paid media. So we paid absolutely nothing to promote this. And we got over 800,000 impressions on it and over 100,000 opens. So over 800,000 people saw this, not spending a dime on promoting it. So that's really the power behind social AR, is that things can catch on and they can grow very organically. And this is something that's still getting impressions, it's still live on our page. And people are still using it, even though we're not promoting it at all right now. The other benefit to social AR is that your audience already has the apps, they're already on there, and it's things that people are using every day already. I don't know about you guys, I definitely wake up and check Instagram. It's probably not healthy for me, but whatever. Your audience is super young, you're hitting that millennial target that everybody loves, the 20-somethings. Pretty much everybody in their 20s has either Instagram or Snapchat, or Facebook, but you can hit more mom age with that. So that's some of the benefits of social AR. Here are some examples of filters that we've made. You can see they kind of range from anything from just a simple 2D like camera style, which is what you see all the way on the left, all the way up to a fully fledged game, which you see all the way on the right. This is a gardening game, so you tap to grow your flowers, and then you can collect them, sell them for coins, buy more flowers, so on and so forth. So you can really build out a lot in these programs, and you can have a super wide range of what you can do with this. A lot of people think that since it's hosted in social AR, it's going to be a super basic, like, oh, it's a crown, or oh, it's like, just a watermark on the screen or something. But you can build out all kinds of interactivity with this, and you can really get creative, which is why we love it. This one in the middle is something we built out for RMSC, the Rochester Museum and Science Center. Okay. So it's basically a quiz filter. If you think of like a BuzzFeed quiz, it comes up with a question of, what describes you best, and you pick the two options. And then at the end, it'll put you in a category of what type of change maker you are, which is what their whole exhibit is based off of, the different types of change makers and women and how they've influenced basically the world. That's at RMSC. If you guys have a free weekend, I definitely recommend checking it out. That's some of our examples. So Instagram, this is probably the #1 thing that we do because everybody already has a following on Instagram. It's something that, we're all on, and we follow brands and companies on there already. So when you have a filter, it's actually hosted on your Instagram page. This is our page, for example. It's right here on this effects tab. So you have your regular grid, and then if you have things like IGTV or Reels and your tagged photos, it's right there with it. So this is really great for brands that have a following already. You'll see a lot of brands like Netflix who have millions of followers have filters like this because it's super easy for people to find and to associate back with your brand. And that's really the big thing, is that these are all branded experiences. So every time somebody uses one of these filters, they're engaging with your brand and they're thinking about your brand. And then when they post it, those people are seeing your brand and engaging with your brand in a very organic way. They're also, as I said, super easy to share and spread. So every time that you use a filter, which is what you see here on the left, it links back to that filter. So when somebody posts it, everybody who follows them and sees that post is going to be able to see your filter and see that it's linked back to your brand as well. So it's really great for connecting your brand to it and keeping people like in the back of their mind being like, oh, this is something for, you know, Hershey. And then on the right, you can also search through it, which you can get some weird results like this guy, but so you can tag it with keywords and people can find it that way as well. Something that's really, really great about Instagram and Spark AR. Spark AR is their proprietary platform or game engine for it. And you can build all of your experiences within Spark AR, and then it ports it directly to Instagram for you. The really awesome thing about this is that you get stats with it, which if you're in any kind of advertising or marketing, this is like a gold mine, right? You can see how people are using it, how people are engaging with it, you know, who is doing that, what they like about it. The big thing on Instagram is impressions, which is every time I post it to my story and say 100 people see my story, that's 100 impressions. And that's pretty traditional to like views on a regular piece of media or regular ad. So that's impressions. Opens is times that people have gone in and played with it themselves. Captures, self-explanatory, people who have taken a picture with it. Those are the three main ones that we take a look at. And like I said, it's really great to be able to see that because you can track when people are engaging with it. If you do pay to promote it, you can see when it spikes, you know, like if I pay somebody to use it and promote it, is that actually affecting people using it or not? You can also see audience breakdowns, you know, gender, age, and their top countries, like their location of where they're using it. But we tend to not use that as much as strictly like the impressions and opens. Snapchat is the other big player. If you remember back when the dancing hot dog came out, everybody was using this. Now, what you could imagine what that would be like if that were branded for like Zweigels or something, it would just blow up, and then that's free advertising. So Snapchat is a little bit more elusive. It's a little bit rougher to connect back to your brand because you don't have like a brand page the same way that you do on Instagram. But there are a lot of other benefits to working with Snapchat. You hit a much younger audience. You know, everybody like 13 and up is on Snapchat. Yeah, they're doing their own thing. But it also has a lot of really cool tech features to it. Snapchat is really reaching out to see what they can do in the field, you know, with machine learning and landmarker tracking and marker tracking. The machine learning is a really big one within Snapchat. They're building a system where you can essentially teach it to recognize things, whether it's objects or music or even words. So it has this new feature where you can recognize speech, and you can use this for all sorts of things. You can use it for like triggers. So when I say like 3, 2, 1, go, it can start something. But a big thing is for advertising, because it can recognize kind of what you're saying. I know it's a little dystopian, but advertisers love dystopian things. We're all up in your business, especially with the object tracking and object recognizing. If you point something at like a Chevy logo, it'll recognize that it's a Chevy logo. And we can actually connect your filter to that so that when you scan a Chevy logo, it comes up as one of the things that's like, hey, this is a Chevy logo. So there's so much that you can do within Snapchat. They also don't have a lot of rules and regulations on it besides like law. So that's really awesome and really freeing. Whereas Instagram and Facebook have more tight regulations on it because they are such a giant that those social media apps have their own rules and regulations that you do have to abide by. But Snapchat, you can do whatever you want. Except advance to the next slide. Organic discovery on Snapchat. It's pretty similar to Instagram. When you receive a snap, it will link back to that lens. And you can also search for it. So these are the two main ways that you find lenses on Snapchat. Like I said, because it's not tied back to your brand's page, it's a little bit harder to find, but when people start sending it out and sharing it, it's linked right there for them to use. Snapchat also has a promoted content feature that plays kind of like a traditional YouTube ad. So when you're scrolling through and you're watching people's stories or you're watching Snapchat's own content, it'll come up with these ads that you have to wait 5 seconds before you can skip past. So this is a really cool way to integrate traditional advertising in the same campaign with AR. You can also pay, if you look on the right here, to have your lens promoted in the carousel. So when you open Snapchat, it comes with a couple lenses preloaded into it that you don't have to search for. They're just on that bottom carousel. And you just pay to promote it and it's right there, super easy. This is one of the most common ways for advertisers to use Snapchat because whether or not you follow them, whether or not you already engage with that brand, it's there for you. So if you open up Snapchat, you'll see a lot of branded filters on it immediately like that. Snapchat also provides metrics. Snapchat is a little bit more in depth with theirs, which is super awesome. We love to see that as an advertiser, again, for tracking purposes and for being able to see how your filters are performing. So for your audience, you do get the same kind of demographics of, age and gender breakdowns, and you also get their location. But the really cool thing about Snapchat is you can see their interests. So you can see if I have a Coke filter, what other people who use that filter are interested in, right? Are they also looking at other food branded things? Are they looking at clothes for some reason? And you can kind of go off of that so that when you pay to promote it, you know which audiences you want to hit. If my filter is often hitting people who are into fashion, then I'm going to pay to promote it to an audience who's into fashion. They also provide a heck of a lot of engagement metrics, which is super cool. So you can see the same, plays, views, and shares, but you also get playtime per session, which is a really, really important feature because you can see how long people are in it and using it and paying attention to it, which is one of the biggest sells about AR for advertising is that people are engaged with your content. People are using it. People are actively, being involved with your brand. Whereas a traditional ad, you watch it, maybe you pull out your phone while it's on, or you leave the room during a commercial break. AR forces you to be there with it. You're engaged with it. You're part of the ad at that point. So playtime is really cool because you can see if people are actually getting that depth with it. Here are a few of our favorites, or I guess just one because the other one's not going to load, but this Bacardi one is in Snapchat, and you can see that they're really, they're using the whole body tracking system that Snapchat has, which is super cool. It can track every one of your joints with a pretty good accuracy. And then you can apply post effects to it, which is what you're seeing here. It's one of those ones that's not very directly an ad for Bacardi. It's not like you have like a handle of rum on you, but it's branded. So people are using it because it's, fun to use in and of itself. But then it also has your logo. So every time somebody's just playing around with it, they also think of your brand. This one here on the right is for Jaeger. You can see there's a theme here. This is a really cool example because we like to be able to see your brand aesthetic come out in this. Another concern that a lot of people have is, this is a new medium and I'm using the camera. How am I going to make sure that my product and my, my aesthetic is going to come through? This is a really good example because you can see, even though it's overlaid on the world, it's still got really strong branding. And as soon as you see this, you know what it's an ad for. You do see the product in it a couple times, but it's not even the main feature of it, which is a really, really cool thing to see. So timeline on this for social AR, most of our filters take around 3 to 5 weeks. The short ones take 2 to 3 weeks, and the longer ones can take 6+ weeks, depending on what it is that we're building out. These timelines do include, space for the client to give us feedback. So it's not like we're spending 5 weeks developing this all the way through, we'll spend maybe half of that time working on it and the other half waiting for the client to say like, yes, this is good, here's what I want to change, and going through that review process, which is it's integral with working with a client. You're going to come across that in any form of media. Yeah, so that's timeline. There are 2 other types of AR that we don't really use as much. There are some, hindrances to using them that make them not great for advertising. But I thought I'd talk about it because there are situations where these do come in handy and you would want to use this. So the first of these is web AR. This is AR that's hosted on the web, on a web page. So you would just type in the URL and boom, it's right there. This seems like it would be really, really great, but we run into some issues with it. I personally am not a fan, but that's my personal take on it. It's very limiting in terms of like what you can do with your phone. If you have, like an older phone, it's going to chug really hard versus if you have a newer phone. Whereas something like social AR, they have guidelines that keep you within a certain, bandwidth, certain size limits, so that they do run consistently on all phones. With web, you have the freedom to go over that size limit. So if you want to build out something that's, only going to be able to be used on the latest iPhone, you have that ability and you have that flexibility, which is, really cool, especially for a lot of us developers. It's just a little limiting for advertising because obviously we want as many people to be able to see it as possible. Another kind of drawback to web AR is that it's hosted on the web. And I don't know about you guys, but most of the time that I'm on the internet, like on like Google Chrome, it's on my laptop or my desktop, which is even worse because I don't have a webcam. And whenever a website asks, can I see your camera? I'm like, absolutely not. Whereas social AR already has access to those things. So it, you don't really think twice about it. Although web AR can be accessed by people who don't have social handles. So, it's really a drawback. You have to think about your client's needs and your project's needs and kind of what you want to do with that. So these are some examples of it. As you can see, they're a little bit more fleshed out than what you can do in social AR. Although web AR typically doesn't do face tracking. It's just when you're on social media, you want to post yourself, you want to post selfies. It's all about you. Whereas when you're on the web and you're maybe not going to share it as often, people are less concerned about that factor. And then the last one is app AR. It's got a lot of the similarities with web AR where you can kind of do whatever you want. There are no rules to it. You can build it as big as you want. The main drawback with this is that you have to download the app, right? With social AR, it's already on your phone. It's already right there. With app AR, you do have to get people to download it. That said, nowadays it's not so hard. You can direct people right to the app store and then download it right from there. And then once you're in that app, you also have like a pretty firm grasp on that person because they are exploring your app. It's more than just this social filter. They then can look around. For example, this one's from IKEA. So you can play with the AR, you can see it in your space, and then you can actually go and buy it, which is a pretty big thing for advertising. So this is something usually that we would not suggest as a standalone, but rather as a feature in an existing app that they have that's already out, already downloaded on people's phones, just as like an update that people can now use this AR feature. Here's some examples of that. Probably the most famous AR in advertising is 19 Crimes. This is an app. So you would download the app and then you can scan all the different wine bottles and they would come alive and talk to you and, tell you their story. It's a little creepy, but it's kind of fun. So yeah, you can see the scale of what you can build out with app AR is way bigger. You're not limited by any platform's restrictions on size. It's totally up to you. You do, again, have to account for what level of phone you want. You know, are people only going to be able to use this on the latest and greatest phones? Or is it something that you're going to build out to be able to be used by everybody? Just something to keep in mind as you're building it out. And then lastly, some things to consider, things that we tend to run into as roadblocks or obstacles to overcome when working with a client. The biggest one is that clients need explaining a lot of times. A lot of people who, you know, work in the marketing department of other brands tend to not be the most technically involved, which is kind of ironic considering all of the tech issues that we've had in this meeting. But you do have to go in and explain to them kind of the back end of things and the process and how young people are using social media, you know. A lot of these slides are actually pulled from presentations that we give to clients to kind of walk them through, you know, what is it that we're even talking about right now? If anybody on their team is like a little bit lost and needs to get up to speed with the rest of the team, we'll send them things out like this deck where they can go through and read and kind of learn on their own. The next one is cost. You really do have to weigh, is this something that is worth it? In a lot of cases, yes, of course it is, because you get that really deep engagement and that deep connection with your audience. But something like a boutique store or like a little bit more of a smaller client, this might not be great for. Bigger clients like Coca-Cola, like Hershey's, they have money to spend, all right? And they're like, fine, yeah, you need like X amount of money, go for it. They don't think twice about it. So when you're pitching to a client what you want your campaign to look like, consider, you know, what their budget is. Is this something that is going to work with their audience? Is it going to be worth it for them? And the last one is accessibility. Who do you want to be seeing this? How do you want them to access it? What audiences do you want to hit? All of that goes into considerations when you're pitching to a client. Yeah, that's it. My contact info is on my slide that is working. So if you guys have any questions after this, or you want to just chat more about it or feedback on anything, feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Does anybody have questions right now? Yes. All right. Yeah, let's hear it.
From the journalism perspective, I've watched the news, and then as the news is happening, I would go on and check where the location was, and I could see that what people were happening in real time. And again, especially the fashion industry, they really use it. So any of the fashion shows. And I saw the potential of how the I've noticed that the pandemic is really kind of falling off. I'm kind of seeing that the pandemic is just kind of falling off. There's not much going on. That's curious. It's sure if you've played around with not all or figured it out.
Yeah, so for the people on Zoom, the question was about Snap Maps and Snapchat's location tracking for where the user is. The really cool thing about Snapchat that is kind of like their main selling point, or at least was in the past, is that you can geolocate. So if you were to take a Snapchat right now, you would find a bunch of magic filters on there, or a bunch of, you know, things that tag where you're at, or RIT. So you can do that with a filter where if you are within, say you're within RIT's campus, it'll auto load your filter up on that carousel so that people can use that automatically. It's called geolocating. So you just pay for whatever area. You pay like $5 per like square mile or whatever it is. And obviously time of day comes into consideration with price, where it is. It's not going to cost the same here versus Manhattan, obviously. But yeah, you can do that. You can totally tag like a location and it'll come up. The other really cool location-based feature that Snapchat has is like building recognition or landmark recognition. So if you go to I think it's like the Empire State Building, or like the Eiffel Tower, or any prominent building, you can build a filter that is reactive to that, and uses that landmark as a target, which is really cool. It's better than like a traditional image because it takes into account the 3D aspect of it and the shape of it, and things like weather. You know, if it's like cloudy versus sunny, it can still recognize that landmark. So you can use that to build, maybe like you have a flyer on the Eiffel Tower or something, so that when somebody's there in Paris, they can pull it up and actually track to that. So yeah. Yeah, you could totally do that. So you can set it for the dates of Frameless for the times that, you know, you're having talks, and you can just set it within RIT or even smaller if you wanted to go smaller. Yeah, I see we have some chats. I have to read now. All right, love to hear about the economic aspects of AR and VR. Okay, that's not a question, but thank you. Does everybody in the audience or anybody on Zoom have any questions? Thank you. All right. The medium what? Yeah. Yeah, Google and a lot of other like independent developers do have their own like APIs and things that you can download. The reason we don't really use those as much as things like Spark AR is that you have to put them in something, you know, you have to put it into a web AR, you know, application, whereas social AR and Spark AR, they build out kind of like directly into it. So, you know, we're artists primarily, or technical artists. So it's really easy for us to go in and just use that. The things like Google is making, while they're really, really cool technically, it's a bit more difficult for us to use. So yeah, exactly. So we're excited for that to get more mainstream and get more, you know, easy for artists to use, but it's not quite there yet, but their tech is. Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, everybody in the Zoom land, that concludes the Zoom portion of our meeting today. So we'd like to say thank you to everybody who came in and sat with us through our Zoom meeting. This was fantastic. I think at our peak, I saw 16 participants on Zoom. Thanks, Mark, Jetty, for putting out to the Washington, DC chapter that we were going to be hosting this event. It's great to get some interaction from other SIGGRAPH chapters.
Anytime, we're here to help, you know, and hey, maybe we'll do a presentation sometime. You did a really good job, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And thanks to everybody from DC who stopped by. We hope that I threw the link to join our chapter in the chat. It's just a Google form. You put a little information in and you'll get updates from us as we email them out. As far as our next meeting, there might be something next month, but we'll definitely be hosting another virtual talk in October of some sort of a virtual event, which we'll be sending out information as we get closer. So the best way to stay in contact with us is to stay or to join the chapter through that Google form. So hope everybody joins. Other than that, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.